There's something nobody tells you about manifestation, and it's the reason why it's not working for you. You've been doing everything they said to do. You visualize your dream life every morning. You repeat affirmations until your voice goes hoarse. You plaster vision boards all over your walls. You think positive thoughts. You raise your vibration. You trust the universe. And yet, weeks turn into months, months turn into years, and your reality stays exactly the same. Maybe you get small wins here and there, little breadcrumbs that keep you hoping, but the big shift, the real transformation, the life you actually want, it never comes. And here's what's devastating. It's not because manifestation doesn't work. It's because almost everything you've been taught about manifestation is fundamentally, scientifically, quantum mechanically wrong. Think about a radio for a moment. When you want to hear a specific station clearly, you tune the dial to that exact frequency. But what happens if you try to listen to two stations at the same time? You don't get both songs playing in harmony. You get static, noise, interference, nothing clear, nothing usable, just chaos. That's exactly what's happening in your quantum manifestation process right now. You're trying to broadcast two completely incompatible frequencies simultaneously, and the field is responding with static. Here's what that looks like in real life. You sit down to visualize abundance. You see the bank account, the dream house, the freedom. For those 10 or 15 minutes, you're tuned into the frequency of wealth. You feel it. You believe it. You're there. But then you open your eyes, check your actual bank account, see the same disappointing number, and immediately your body floods with anxiety. Your heart contracts. Your stomach tightens. Your brain starts running the familiar program of lack and limitation. For the next 23 hours and 45 minutes, you're broadcasting poverty consciousness. You just spent 15 minutes on the abundance frequency and nearly 24 hours on the scarcity frequency. Which signal do you think the quantum field is responding to? But it gets worse. The very act of constantly checking whether it's working, the obsessive monitoring of your 3D reality for signs of change, is actually preventing the change from happening. There's a phenomenon in quantum physics called the quantum Zeno Effect. Scientists discovered that if you observe a quantum system constantly, if you keep measuring it over and over, you actually freeze it in its current state. The observation itself prevents the system from evolving. You lock it in place. Let me make this crystal clear because this changes everything. When you plant a seed in the ground, you don't dig it up every day to check if it's growing. You don't stand over it with a magnifying glass measuring the progress hourly. Why? Because you know that would kill the seed. You'd destroy the very process you're trying to encourage. But that's exactly what you're doing with your manifestations. You plant the quantum seed through intention, then you immediately start digging it up with constant observation, constant checking, constant need for evidence. And every time you do that, you collapse the quantum possibility back into the current reality. You're freezing your manifestation in a state of not yet manifested. The quantum field operates on principles that are completely counterintuitive to your logical mind. Your brain, which evolved to keep you safe in a physical world, wants certainty. It wants proof. It wants to see the thing before it believes the thing is possible. But quantum manifestation requires the exact opposite. It requires you to believe, to be, to embody the reality before the physical evidence appears. And not just believe intellectually, but become it so completely at the energetic level that checking for evidence becomes irrelevant, because you already are the thing you're trying to become. Here's the brutal truth that most manifestation teachers won't tell you because it doesn't sound inspiring enough for social media. Manifestation is not about adding more techniques to your routine. It's not about doing more visualizations, more affirmations, more scripting, more tapping. If you're not getting results, adding more of what's not working won't suddenly make it work. You can't do 100 broken things and expect them to add up to one thing that works. The issue isn't quantity, it's quality, it's coherence. And most people have zero understanding of what coherence actually means in the context of quantum manifestation. They think it means thinking positive thoughts consistently. But coherence is far more sophisticated than that. Coherence means every part of your being is broadcasting the same signal. Your conscious thoughts, your subconscious beliefs, your emotional state, your electromagnetic field, your physical body, all of them tuned to the exact same frequency, with zero interference, zero contradiction, zero static. Right now, you're probably a walking contradiction. Your mind says one thing, your heart feels another, your body believes something completely different, and your electromagnetic field is broadcasting chaos into the quantum sea. And the field is responding to that chaos by giving you exactly what you're actually asking for at the energetic level, which is confusion, inconsistency, and more of the same reality you're trying to change. This is why someone can manifest a small amount of money easily, but can't manifest the big number. It's why you can attract a date but not a committed relationship. It's why you get interviews but never the job offer. You're coherent enough to shift reality slightly, but the moment the stakes get higher, the moment it's something you really want, your field falls apart. The wanting itself creates desperation. The desperation creates fear. The fear creates doubt. And doubt is the loudest frequency of all. It drowns out everything else. What you're about to learn in this video is not another manifestation technique to add to your collection. This is a complete rewiring of how you understand and interact with the quantum field. This is about becoming someone who doesn't need to try to manifest because their entire being has become a coherent field that naturally organizes reality around it. Not through force, not through effort, but through alignment with how quantum mechanics actually operates. Let's talk about what quantum physics actually says, not what Instagram manifestation coaches say it says. Because there's a massive gap between real science and spiritual pop culture, and that gap is where most people are losing their power. The quantum realm operates on laws that seem bizarre and impossible to your everyday mind, but they're not theories. They're proven. They're measurable. They're repeatable in laboratories around the world. And when you understand these principles correctly, manifestation stops being a mystical hope and becomes a practical application of physics. The first thing you need to understand is this. At the quantum level, nothing is solid. The chair you're sitting on, the device you're watching this on, your own body, all of it is made of atoms. And atoms are 99.999% empty space. The particles that make up atoms, electrons and protons and neutrons, they're not solid little balls of matter. They're vibrating waves of energy and information. They don't have a fixed location until they're observed. Before observation, they exist in what's called superposition, which means they exist in all possible locations simultaneously. Now here's where it gets interesting for manifestation. When you observe a quantum particle, when you measure it, the act of observation forces it to collapse from a wave of infinite possibilities into one single definite location. You, the observer, literally create the reality of that particle by choosing to look at it. Before you looked, it was everywhere. After you look, it's somewhere specific. Your consciousness collapsed infinite potential into one actual outcome. This isn't philosophy. This is the foundation of quantum mechanics. And it won this discovery a Nobel Prize because it shattered everything we thought we knew about reality. It proved that consciousness and matter are not separate. Consciousness doesn't just observe reality. Consciousness participates in creating reality at the most fundamental level. But here's what the manifestation world gets wrong. They take this concept and oversimplify it into, think about what you want and it will appear. That's not how it works. The relationship between consciousness and quantum collapse is far more nuanced. It's not your surface thoughts that collapse reality. It's your entire field of consciousness, which includes your subconscious programming, your emotional state, your beliefs, your expectations, your electromagnetic signature. All of that together creates the observation that collapses the quantum wave. So when you're thinking, I am abundant, but your subconscious believes money is hard to get, and your body is flooded with stress chemicals, and your heart is clenched with fear, what are you actually observing? You're not observing abundance. You're observing the familiar state of struggle and lack. And the quantum field responds to the observation you're actually making, not the one you wish you were making. Now let's talk about something called quantum tunneling, because this will completely change how you approach obstacles in your manifestation journey. In classical physics, if a ball doesn't have enough energy to roll over a hill, it stays on the side it started on. It needs more force, more energy, more effort to get over the barrier. But in quantum mechanics, Particles can pass through barriers they don't have enough energy to climb over. They don't go around the barrier. They don't climb over it. They tunnel through it. They simply appear on the other side, even though, according to classical physics, that should be impossible. How does this happen? It happens because the particle exists in a state of probability. There's a small probability that it exists on the other side of the barrier, and when the conditions are right, that probability becomes reality. The particle doesn't use force. It doesn't struggle. It exists in the quantum state where both sides of the barrier are possible, and then it collapses into the reality where it's already on the other side. This is the secret to manifestation that nobody teaches. You don't overcome obstacles through force and struggle. You don't push harder against resistance. You don't try to climb over the barriers in your life. You quantum tunnel through them by existing in a state where the obstacle and the outcome exist simultaneously, and then you allow the collapse into the outcome. You stop fighting the current reality and start embodying the desired reality so completely that the universe has no choice but to tunnel you through. But most people can't do this because they're locked into classical thinking. They see an obstacle and immediately shift into force mode. They try harder. They push more. They exhaust themselves trying to climb over a barrier that, at the quantum level, they could simply tunnel through by changing their state of being. The obstacle isn't the problem. Your relationship to the obstacle is the problem. There's another principle called the Heisenberg uncertainty principle that has profound implications for manifestation. Werner Heisenberg discovered that you cannot simultaneously know both the exact position and the exact momentum of a particle. The more precisely you measure one, the less precisely you can know the other. Why? Because the act of measurement affects the system. Your observation changes what you're observing. Applied to manifestation, this means the more you try to control exactly how and when your manifestation will arrive, the more you interfere with the natural flow of the quantum field organizing reality for you. When you get rigid about the path, about the timing, about the specific details of how it has to happen, you're collapsing limited possibilities. You're forcing the universe to show you only the routes that match your limited human perspective. And you're missing all the quantum shortcuts, all the synchronistic pathways, all the ways it could happen that you couldn't possibly predict or plan. The universe operates with far more intelligence than your conscious mind. The quantum field has access to all information, all possibilities, all timelines simultaneously. When you relax your grip on the how and when you stop obsessively measuring the position and momentum of your manifestation, you allow the field to deliver it through the path of least resistance, through quantum tunneling, through synchronicity, through what looks like magic but is actually sophisticated quantum mechanics. Dr. Joe Dispenza talks about moving from particle to wave. When you're living as a particle, you're identified with your body, your environment, your past, your current circumstances. You're solid, fixed, limited. But when you move into the quantum field through meditation, through elevated emotions, through expanded states of consciousness, you become wave-like. You become possibility. You become all potential outcomes simultaneously. And from that state, you can collapse into any reality that matches your frequency. Most people never leave particle mode. They stay locked in the solid identity of who they've always been, defined by their history, limited by their current circumstances. They try to manifest from particle consciousness, which is like trying to access the internet with a typewriter. You're using the wrong technology for what you're trying to accomplish. Quantum manifestation requires you to regularly dissolve your particle identity and exist as a wave of possibility. This is why meditation isn't optional for real manifestation work. It's not about relaxation or stress relief. It's about accessing the quantum field where you can exist in superposition, where all versions of your life are available simultaneously, where you can try on different realities energetically before they collapse into physical form. And here's something that will blow your mind. There's an experiment called the delayed choice quantum eraser that proved something absolutely wild. Scientists showed that a choice made in the present can change what happened in the past at the quantum level. Not change our memory of the past. Actually, change what happened. Quantum information can be rewritten retroactively based on present observation. What this means for you is profound. Your past is not fixed. The meaning you've assigned to past events, the beliefs you formed from past experiences, the identity you built from your history. None of it is set in stone at the quantum level. When you change your present state of consciousness, when you choose a different observation point, you literally reorganize the quantum information of your past. You free up energy that was locked in old patterns. You rewrite the story in a way that serves your evolution instead of limiting it. This is why people who do deep quantum healing work often report that their memories of traumatic events feel different. Not because they're lying to themselves, but because they've actually changed the quantum signature of that information in their field. They've collapsed a different interpretation, a different meaning, a different energetic charge around that experience. And that changes everything. Now we need to talk about why you keep collapsing the wrong reality, even when you know all of this. Even when you understand the science. Even when you're doing the meditations and the visualizations and all the practices. There's a hidden mechanism sabotaging you that almost nobody addresses, and it's called energetic incoherence. This is the real reason your manifestations aren't landing. Not because you don't want it enough, not because you don't believe enough, but because your electromagnetic field is sending a scrambled, contradictory signal into the quantum soup, and scrambled signals get scrambled results. Let me explain what coherence actually means, because this word gets thrown around in spiritual circles without anyone really defining it. In physics, coherence refers to waves that are in sync with each other. Imagine dropping two stones into a still pond at the exact same moment. The ripples spread out, and where they meet, they either amplify each other or cancel each other out. When waves are coherent, when they're synchronized, they amplify. They become stronger. They create constructive interference. When waves are out of sync, they create destructive interference. They cancel each other out. They create chaos. Your body is generating electromagnetic fields constantly. Your heart generates the strongest electromagnetic field in your body, 5,000 times more powerful than your brain. This field extends several feet beyond your physical body. It's measurable, it's real, and it's broadcasting information into the quantum field every single second. Your brain also generates an electromagnetic field through your thoughts and neural activity. These two fields, heart and brain, are meant to work together in coherence, sending a unified, amplified signal. But here's what's actually happening for most people. Their brain is thinking one thing, and their heart is feeling something completely opposite. The brain is visualizing wealth while the heart is contracting with fear of not having enough. The brain is affirming love while the heart is armored with walls built from past pain. The brain is imagining success while the heart carries deep unworthiness. These are not coherent signals. These are contradictory waves creating destructive interference in your electromagnetic field. And the quantum field doesn't respond to what you want or what you think you're asking for. It responds to the actual signal you're broadcasting. When your heart and brain are in conflict, you're not sending a clear request. You're sending static. And the universe can't deliver clarity from chaos. It can only mirror back more chaos, more confusion, more of the same mixed results you've been getting. When people achieve true heart-brain coherence, when their thoughts and emotions are perfectly aligned and synchronized, their electromagnetic field becomes ordered, powerful, and coherent. And in that state, radical healings happen. Spontaneous manifestations occur. Reality shifts, not because of wishful thinking, but because they've finally created a clear, amplified signal that the field can organize around. But most people have never experienced true coherence for more than a few seconds in their entire lives. They've spent decades building neural pathways of stress, survival emotions, and internal conflict. Their baseline state is incoherence. Their normal is chaos, and you cannot manifest from chaos. You cannot create order in your external world when your internal world is electromagnetic noise. There's another layer to this that's even more insidious. Unprocessed emotions create what I call quantum noise. Every emotion you've suppressed, every feeling you've pushed down, every experience you've avoided processing, it doesn't just go away. It gets stored in your body as energetic information. These trapped emotions create distortions in your field. They're like constantly playing background static that interferes with any new signal you're trying to broadcast. Think of it like trying to record a beautiful song while construction work is happening next door. The jackhammers and drills create noise that bleeds into your recording. No matter how well you sing, the final track is contaminated. That's what unprocessed emotions do to your manifestation signal. You can have the most perfect visualization, the most elevated intention, but if your field is carrying unresolved grief, suppressed anger, hidden shame, or deep fear, that emotional noise distorts everything. This is why some people can manifest easily in certain areas of life but hit a wall in others. In the areas where they're emotionally clear, where they have no trauma or limiting beliefs, their field is coherent and manifestation flows naturally. But in areas where they carry wounds, old stories, or emotional baggage, their field is full of interference and nothing moves. It's not that the universe is withholding from them. It's that their signal in that area is too distorted to collapse a clear reality. Most manifestation teaching completely ignores this. They tell you to just focus on what you want and ignore everything else. But ignoring doesn't clear the field. It just buries the interference deeper. Real quantum manifestation requires you to become ruthlessly honest about what's actually running in your system. You have to face the fear, feel the unworthiness, acknowledge the doubt, process the old pain. Not to dwell in it, but to clear it out of your electromagnetic broadcasting system. When you do this clearing work, something remarkable happens. Your field becomes cleaner. Your signal becomes clearer. And manifestations that seemed impossible suddenly start showing up with ease because you've removed the interference that was scrambling the message. You're no longer trying to manifest wealth while carrying poverty consciousness. You're no longer trying to manifest love while armored against intimacy. You're no longer trying to manifest health while identified with illness. You've cleared the contradictions, and coherence becomes your natural state. There's also the issue of what you're actually coherent with, because you can be in perfect coherence with the wrong frequency. If your thoughts, emotions, and beliefs are all perfectly aligned around the idea that life is hard, that you're not enough, that things never work out for you, congratulations, you've achieved coherence. But you're coherently manifesting struggle. Your field is unified and powerful, but it's unified around limitation. This is why some people are incredibly consistent in their misery. They're not unlucky. They're coherent with lack. Every part of their being agrees that this is how life is, and the quantum field efficiently delivers more evidence to support that coherent belief. They're master manifestors. They're just manifesting the wrong reality with absolute precision. The shift happens when you become coherent with possibility instead of limitation. When every part of you, conscious and subconscious, aligns around the frequency of your desired reality. When your thoughts support it, your emotions embody it, your beliefs allow it, and your electromagnetic field broadcasts it without contradiction. That's when the quantum field has no choice but to reorganize physical reality to match your signal. Not because you forced it, but because coherent signals create coherent realities. That's just physics. There's a window of opportunity in the quantum manifestation process that almost everyone misses. And missing this window is the difference between manifestations that collapse into reality and intentions that evaporate into nothing. I call it the quantum window, and it exists in the space between setting an intention and the physical manifestation appearing. Most people contaminate this window so thoroughly that they destroy their manifestation before it even has a chance to form. Here's what typically happens. You set a powerful intention, maybe during meditation, maybe in a moment of clarity, maybe when you're feeling elevated and connected. In that moment, you access the quantum field, you plant the seed, you send the signal, and for that brief window of time, the quantum possibilities begin organizing around your intention. The field starts moving. Synchronicities start aligning. The universe begins rearranging particles and probabilities to match your request. But then you open your eyes and go back to your regular life. And within hours, sometimes minutes, you're back in your old state. You're thinking your habitual thoughts. You're feeling your familiar emotions. You're running your default programs. And every time you drop back into that old frequency, you send a contradictory signal to the field. You're essentially telling the universe, never mind, I'm still the old me, go back to creating the old reality. The quantum window is the period where the manifestation is forming in the invisible realm before it becomes visible in physical reality. In this window, your manifestation is highly susceptible to interference. It's like a developing photograph in a darkroom. If you open the door and let light in before it's fully developed, you ruin the image. The quantum window requires you to protect the frequency, to maintain the coherence, to stay in the state of the wish fulfilled until the manifestation stabilizes. And here's what makes this challenging. The quantum window can last days, weeks, even months, depending on what you're manifesting. The bigger the manifestation, the longer the window. And most people cannot hold a coherent frequency for more than a few hours, let alone weeks. They contaminate the window with doubt, impatience, need, checking for results, talking about what hasn't happened yet, complaining about current circumstances. Every time they do this, they collapse the forming manifestation back into potential and have to start over. This is also where your brainwave state becomes critical. Your normal waking consciousness operates in beta brainwaves. Beta is great for logical thinking, problem solving, getting things done in the physical world. But beta cannot access the quantum field. Beta is too fast, too surface level, too locked into physical reality. Manifestation happens in the slower brainwave states, alpha, theta, and delta. Alpha is the gateway. It's that relaxed, slightly drowsy state when you're drifting off to sleep or just waking up. Your conscious mind is still online, but your subconscious is more accessible. Theta is deeper. It's the state of deep meditation, REM sleep, that twilight zone between waking and sleeping. In theta, your subconscious is wide open, and your access to the quantum field is direct. Delta is the deepest, the state of dreamless sleep where your consciousness can access information beyond time and space. Here's the key that changes everything. You need to access theta and delta while conscious, not asleep. Consciously awake in the state where your brain normally shuts down. This is what advanced meditators, mystics, and quantum manifestors have learned to do. They've trained themselves to enter these deep brainwave states while maintaining awareness. And in those states, they can literally reprogram their subconscious, access the quantum field directly, and collapse realities that seem impossible from the beta state. This is why manifestation often happens during or right after deep meditation. Not because meditation is magical, but because you've slowed your brainwaves down enough to access the field where physical reality is still malleable, still in wave form, still responsive to consciousness. You've entered the quantum window consciously, and you've broadcasted your intention directly into the field, without the interference of your logical mind telling you why it can't happen. There's documented evidence of this from remote viewing programs, out-of-body experiences, near-death experiences, and deep mystical states. People in these altered states have accessed information they couldn't possibly know through normal means. They've seen future events. They've connected with people across vast distances. They've experienced realities beyond the physical. Not because they're special or gifted, but because they accessed the quantum window where consciousness operates outside the limitations of space and time. You have this same capability. You just haven't trained it. Most people live their entire lives in beta, occasionally dipping into alpha when they're relaxed, hitting theta and delta only when unconscious. They never consciously access the states where quantum manifestation actually occurs. So they keep trying to manifest from beta consciousness and wondering why nothing changes. The practice is this: learn to slow down, learn to enter the space between thoughts, learn to exist in the void where physical reality hasn't formed yet. This takes practice, it takes discipline. It takes a willingness to sit in the discomfort of not doing, not thinking, not controlling. But this is where your power lives, not in the doing, in the being, in the state where you become wave instead of particle, where you become possibility instead of fixed identity. And during this quantum window, you have to protect your frequency like your life depends on it, because your manifestation does depend on it. No complaining, no doubt speak, no entertaining worst-case scenarios, no checking your bank account obsessively, no asking everyone if they think it will work. Every time you do these things, you're contaminating the window. You're introducing interference. You're telling the field to pause the delivery. If this is making sense to you, if you're starting to see why your manifestations haven't been landing, write, "I protect the frequency" in the comments. Let's align this energy together and let the algorithm know this message needs to reach more people who are ready for the real science of manifestation. The quantum window is also why the old advice, "let it go," actually has quantum merit, but not for the reasons most people think. It's not about detaching because you don't care anymore. It's about releasing your grip on the manifestation so you stop collapsing it back into potential with your need and desperation. When you truly let it go, when you release it into the field with trust, you stop interfering with the quantum window. You allow the universe to work without your constant meddling, and the manifestation can stabilize and form without interference. But letting go is nearly impossible when you're in need. When you need the money, you can't let go of manifesting money. When you're desperate for love, you can't let go of manifesting the relationship. This is the paradox. The more you need it, the harder you squeeze, and the squeezing kills the manifestation. The only way through is to generate the feeling of already having it so completely that you don't need it anymore, because you already are it. You've collapsed into the reality where it's already yours at the energetic level. So the physical manifestation becomes inevitable rather than desperate. Everything you've learned about manifestation has taught you to add more. More visualizations, more affirmations, more rituals, more techniques, more effort. But what if I told you that real quantum manifestation works in the exact opposite way? What if the secret isn't adding more, but removing everything that doesn't match the reality you're trying to collapse? This is the protocol nobody teaches because it's not sexy, it's not easy to sell, and it requires you to face things you've been avoiding your whole life. Quantum manifestation is subtractive, not additive. You don't become wealthy by adding abundance practices on top of poverty consciousness. You become wealthy by removing every belief, every emotion, every pattern, every program that vibrates at the frequency of lack. You don't attract love by doing more love meditations while your heart is walled off from past hurt. You attract love by dissolving the walls, processing the pain, releasing the protection mechanisms that are blocking intimacy. Think of it like this. You have a glass of dirty water and you want clean water. The additive approach says, pour clean water into the dirty glass and eventually it'll get cleaner. But that's not how it works. The dirt contaminates the clean water. You just end up with more dirty water. The subtractive approach says, empty the glass completely, clean it out, then fill it with pure water. Remove the contamination first, then there's space for what you actually want. Your consciousness is that glass. And right now it's filled with decades of conditioning, limiting beliefs, unprocessed emotions, ancestral patterns, societal programming, fear-based survival strategies, and trauma responses. You can pour as much positive thinking on top of that as you want, but it's just going to mix with the dirt. The dirt has to come out first. This is the work nobody wants to do because it's uncomfortable. It requires you to feel things you've been numbing. It requires you to question beliefs you've held as truth. It requires you to dismantle the identity you've built your entire life around. But here's what happens when you do this work. As you remove each layer of contamination from your field, your natural frequency starts to emerge. And your natural frequency, the frequency of your true self unconditioned by fear and limitation, is extraordinarily high, high enough to collapse realities that seem miraculous from your current state. You don't have to try to raise your vibration. You just have to stop suppressing it with all the heavy emotional baggage you're carrying. There's a quantum physics experiment that proves this concept. It's called the quantum eraser experiment, specifically the delayed choice version. Without getting too technical, scientists showed that you can erase quantum information after it's been recorded, and when you do, the system behaves as if that information never existed. You're not just changing the future, you're retroactively changing the past quantum state. You're rewriting what happened at the information level. Applied to your life, this means when you clear an old emotional pattern, when you dissolve a limiting belief, when you process trauma that's been stored in your body, you're not just healing forward. You're erasing the quantum information that's been keeping you locked in certain probability streams. You're freeing up energy that's been tied up in the past. You're collapsing timelines where those patterns continue to play out. And suddenly, futures that were never available before become accessible because you've removed the quantum block that was preventing them. This is deep work. This is shadow work. This is looking at the parts of yourself you've been hiding from, the emotions you've labeled as unacceptable, the beliefs you inherited without questioning, the wounds you've covered with spiritual bypassing. And it's not comfortable. Your ego will fight this process because the ego's entire job is to keep you safe, and safe to the ego means familiar. Even if familiar is painful, at least it's known. But every time you choose to feel a feeling you've been avoiding, every time you question a belief that's been running your life, every time you release a pattern instead of repeating it, you're performing quantum erasure. You're cleaning the glass. You're removing interference from your field. And the cleaner your field becomes, the more powerful your manifestations become because there's nothing contradicting them anymore. Here's the practical process. You don't need more manifestation techniques. You need a daily practice of becoming aware of what's actually running in your system beneath your conscious awareness. Sit in stillness and ask, what am I afraid of? What do I believe about myself that limits me? What emotions am I carrying that don't belong to the future I'm creating? And then, instead of pushing those things away or covering them with positive affirmations, you feel them. You acknowledge them. You let them move through you and release. This is energetic digestion. You're processing and eliminating what your system has been storing. And just like physical digestion, if you don't eliminate regularly, you become toxic, emotionally constipated, energetically backed up. And no amount of new input is going to help if you can't clear out the old waste. The manifestation world is full of people consuming more and more information, more and more techniques, without ever stopping to eliminate the old programming. They're energetically constipated, wondering why nothing's moving. The subtractive approach also applies to your daily life. Look at what you're doing, who you're spending time with, what you're consuming mentally and emotionally, and ask, is this coherent with where I'm going, or is this keeping me anchored to where I've been? Then start removing everything that's not a match. Not from a place of judgment, but from a place of energetic hygiene. You're not compatible with that frequency anymore. You're not available for that conversation anymore. You're not participating in that pattern anymore. This creates space. And space is what the quantum field needs to deliver something new. If your life is packed full of the old reality, full of relationships that reinforce your old identity, full of activities that numb you rather than elevate you, full of environments that trigger your survival mode, where is the space for the new reality to enter? You have to create a vacuum. Nature abhors a vacuum and will rush to fill it. But you have to create it first by removing what's occupying that space. People are terrified of this because it looks like loss. Letting go of the familiar job, the comfortable but unfulfilling relationship, the friend group that keeps you small, the habits that distract you from yourself. It feels like you're losing your life. But you're not losing. You're clearing. You're making room. You're quantum tunneling through the barrier of the known into the possibility of the unknown. And the unknown is where every manifestation you've ever wanted is waiting. But you can't access it while you're still clutching the known. This is where faith becomes practical, rather than abstract. Faith is not hoping the universe will give you what you want. Faith is trusting that when you remove what's not aligned, something better will fill that space. Faith is knowing that the temporary void created by releasing the old is the fertile ground where the new will grow. Faith is understanding that you don't need to see the entire path. You just need to take the next step of clearing whatever's blocking your frequency right now. And the more you practice this subtractive approach, the faster your manifestations come because there's less and less interference in your field. You become a clean channel, a clear signal, a coherent electromagnetic broadcast that the quantum field can organize around with precision and speed. The universe isn't slow. Your contaminated field is slow. Clean the field and watch how fast reality can shift. We've covered a lot of quantum territory, and if you've stayed with me this far, you're not here for surface-level manifestation tricks. You're here for transformation. So let's bring this home with the only thing that actually matters. Not another technique, not another practice to add to your already overwhelming routine, but a fundamental shift in what you understand manifestation to be at its core. Manifestation is not about getting things. Read that again, because this is where most people lose the plot entirely. They approach the quantum field like it's a cosmic vending machine. Put in the right combination of thoughts and feelings, pull the lever, get the thing you want. And when the thing doesn't appear, they assume they pressed the wrong buttons or didn't want it hard enough or the universe is withholding from them. But that entire framework is backwards. Quantum manifestation is not about acquiring. It's about becoming. It's about transforming yourself into a coherent field of consciousness that naturally organizes particles, people, and circumstances around it. When you become coherent, when every part of your being is aligned and broadcasting the same clear frequency, you don't attract your desires. You become a living magnet that reality has no choice but to reorganize around. Think about a magnet for a moment. A magnet doesn't try to attract iron filings. It doesn't effort or force or hope. It simply is magnetic, and the iron filings organize themselves around its field automatically. That's what you become when you achieve true internal coherence. You stop chasing manifestations and start embodying a frequency that manifestations naturally collapse around. This is why people who've done the deep work, who've cleared their field, who've achieved genuine coherence, seem to manifest effortlessly. They're not working harder at manifestation. They're not doing more techniques. They've become the technique. Their entire being is the practice. Every thought, every emotion, every choice, every moment is coherent with who they've decided to be. And reality bends around that level of commitment and clarity. But here's what that requires. It requires you to stop being who you've been. Completely. Not just during your morning meditation. Not just when you're feeling inspired. But in every moment. You have to catch yourself in the act of being your old self and choose differently. Over and over again until the new self becomes more familiar than the old one. Until your body stops craving the old emotions. Until your brain stops defaulting to the old thoughts. Until the new you is simply who you are, not who you're trying to become. Most people aren't willing to do this. They want transformation without death. They want the new reality without releasing the old identity. They want to keep one foot in the familiar while reaching for something different. And that split is exactly what creates incoherence. You cannot serve two frequencies. You cannot be in two realities simultaneously. At some point, you have to make the quantum leap. You have to fully commit to the new timeline and let the old one collapse completely. This is where the real manifestation happens. Not in the techniques, in the commitment, in the decision that you are no longer available to be the person who lives that old reality. You're not trying to get somewhere. You're not hoping to become someone. You've already decided. You've already chosen. And now it's just a matter of your external reality catching up to the internal shift you've already made. And the beautiful thing about the quantum field is it must respond to a coherent signal. It has no choice, that's physics. When you broadcast a clear, unwavering, coherent electromagnetic signature, the field organizes to match it. Not because you deserve it or because you're special, but because that's how the system works. Coherence creates order. Order creates manifestation. It's mechanical, it's reliable, it's scientific. But you can't fake coherence. You can't pretend your way into it. Your field doesn't lie. Your electromagnetic signature is a direct readout of your actual state, not your desired state. The work is making your actual state match your desired state. That's the practice. That's the protocol. That's the only thing that actually matters. So here's the commitment I'm inviting you to make. Not a commitment to do more. A commitment to be more. 7 days of total coherence. 7 days where you catch every thought that doesn't match your new reality, and you consciously choose a different one. 7 days where you feel every emotion that tries to pull you back into the old frequency, and you consciously choose an elevated one instead. 7 days where you show up as the person who already lives the reality you're collapsing, not the person trying to get there. No checking for results during these 7 days. That's critical. Checking is observing the old reality, which collapses you back into it. Remember the quantum Zeno Effect. Constant observation freezes the system. You have to trust the invisible work happening in the quantum field without needing to see evidence yet. You have to protect the quantum window. You have to maintain the frequency without contamination. 7 days isn't a lot, but it's enough to start rewiring your neural pathways. It's enough to begin shifting your electromagnetic signature. It's enough to prove to yourself that you can hold a frequency different from your habitual one. And if you can do 7 days, you can do 14. And if you can do 14, you can do 30. And at 30 days of coherence, your entire reality will be unrecognizable because you've literally become a different person, broadcasting a different signal. Now, if you're serious about this, if everything we've talked about resonates and you want the complete protocol, The specific techniques for achieving coherence, the exact meditation frameworks for accessing theta and delta states consciously, the step-by-step process for quantum erasure and clearing your field. There's an ebook I've created called Awaken Your Quantum Power. You'll find it in the pinned comment below. It's the bridge between understanding these concepts intellectually and actually applying them in a way that creates measurable shifts in your reality. But whether you dive deeper with that or not, you now have the truth. Manifestation is not a mystery. It's not magic. It's quantum mechanics applied through coherent consciousness.